A compassionate black waitress named Lila had served a quiet, disabled man named Ben for years, never expecting anything in return. Then one day, as she brought him his usual coffee, Ben reached out, handing her a mysterious set of keys along with a note that would change her life forever. The contents of that note would lead Lila down a path she had only dreamed of, giving her a chance to finally achieve her ultimate goal. A warm-hearted waitress named Lila had worked at the local diner for years, greeting each day with her infectious smile and a heart full of gratitude. With her kind, brown eyes and a laugh that echoed like a gentle breeze, Lila brought warmth to every corner of the diner. The familiar aroma of coffee and sizzling bacon welcomed her as she tied on her apron, preparing for another day of serving the close-knit community she loved. "Good morning, everyone," she called out, her voice cutting through the soft clatter of plates and hum of friendly chatter. A chorus of greetings met her, making her heart swell. This place was more than a workplace. It was her second family, a cherished part of her life that she was proud of every day. As she moved from table to table, Lila exchanged smiles and quick conversations, her connection to each customer evident in the warmth of their interactions. There was Mr. Thompson, the retired teacher who had been a regular for over 2 decades. Without a word, Lila reached for the coffee pot. "Your usual, Mr. Thompson?" she asked with a grin. He chuckled, his weathered face wrinkling with joy. "You know me too well, Lila. And how's that boy of yours?" At the mention of her son, Lila's face softened. "Growing like a weed," she laughed. "He's got a big science project coming up." She poured his coffee, then noticed an elderly woman sitting alone in the corner booth. She was new, and though she had visited a few times, she never seemed fully at ease. After setting Mr. Thompson's cup down, Lila walked over to the woman's table. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson. How are you today?" she asked gently, her voice filled with genuine kindness. Mrs. Peterson looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Oh, hello, dear. I'm all right, I suppose," she answered, her voice trailing off. Lila sensed a sadness hidden beneath her words. "How about some blueberry pancakes? They always put a smile on my face," she suggested with a cheerful grin. A faint smile broke across Mrs. Peterson's face for the first time since she'd started coming to the diner. "That sounds lovely, thank you," she replied, her voice barely more than a whisper. Moving with purpose and joy, Lila felt at home here, knowing every smile and every warm word brought something special to the people she served. This job was more than just a means of survival for her. It was a calling, and she embraced it every day. Just as Lila finished taking orders, a familiar figure rolled through the diner's entrance. Ben. A man of few words, Ben had a tough exterior and rarely smiled, but over time, Lila had come to understand him in a way no one else did. She saw beyond his gruff demeanor to the quiet resilience and warmth that he rarely let others see. "Good morning, Ben," she called out, her voice filled with genuine warmth, as she set a menu and a fresh cup of coffee at his usual spot. A small table near the corner, slightly out of the way to accommodate his wheelchair. Ben nodded, a flicker of a smile touching his face. "Morning, Lila," he replied, his voice gruff but not unkind. Lila watched him settle in, noting the way his shoulders relaxed just a little once he was seated. "So, let me guess. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and a side of bacon?" she asked with a grin, already reaching for her notepad. Ben let out a quiet chuckle, a rare sound from him. "You've got me all figured out, haven't you?" "Only took me a few years," she teased. "I'll have it right out for you." Lila couldn't help but feel a soft affection toward Ben. Beneath his reserved demeanor was a man who had faced incredible challenges, though he rarely spoke of them. She sensed his loneliness and tried to ease it, even if only for the length of a breakfast. As she moved through the diner, refilling coffee cups and taking orders, she would stop by Ben's table, sharing small bits of conversation about the weather, her son's latest antics, or even a funny joke she'd heard. Lila noticed that Ben seemed to soften as they talked, his usually tense shoulders relaxing a bit and his gaze turning a little warmer. He didn't need to say much. His gratitude was clear in the way he nodded or offered the occasional smile. A few tables over, Lila's coworker Mary was watching the two with a soft smile. She sidled up to Lila during a quiet moment. "You've got quite a knack with him, you know?" Mary said quietly. "Ben's a hard nut to crack, but you've managed to bring out the best in him." Lila's gaze drifted back to Ben. "I guess he reminds me that everyone's carrying something," she murmured, her voice thoughtful. "Sometimes people just need someone to care." Mary nodded, her expression growing serious. "Well, you're doing a good job of it, Lila. And speaking of caring, how are things with you and James?" A warm smile crossed Lila's face as she thought about her son. "He's my little rock. I just wish I could do more for him." She paused, glancing at the tip jar by the register. It was filled with a few crumpled dollar bills, and she knew every penny counted. "One day, Mary, one day I'm going to open my own little cafe, a place where I can be there for James and create something of our own." Mary reached out, squeezing Lila's hand in a rare moment of affection. "If anyone can do it, Lila, it's you. I mean that. And when the day comes, I'll be the first in line for your famous pancakes." Lila laughed, the hope and warmth of Mary's words settling in her heart. "Thanks, Mary. That means a lot." As she returned to Ben's table with his breakfast, she couldn't help but wonder about his story. She'd heard whispers around town that he had once been a successful businessman before an accident changed everything. But she never pushed him to talk about it, sensing that he'd open up in his own time, if ever. "Here you go, Ben," she said, setting down his plate with a friendly smile. Ben looked up, meeting her gaze with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. "Thanks, Lila," he murmured, his tone softer than usual. For a moment they sat in comfortable silence. Lila felt the significance of his gratitude, knowing that her small gestures of kindness meant more than words could say. And even though her life was filled with its own struggles and worries, being able to brighten Ben's day made her own troubles feel lighter. After serving Ben his breakfast, Lila's thoughts wandered to her son, James. At just 10 years old, he was already wise beyond his years, often insisting on making his own lunch to save her time. She'd often catch herself daydreaming about how much she wished she could give him more, a bigger home, more stability, and a mother who didn't have to work every waking moment to make ends meet. As she moved back to the counter, Lila's gaze landed on the tip jar. It wasn't much, just a few crumpled bills, but each dollar meant something to her. Tucked away in her closet at home was a small jar where she stashed every extra penny she could. She called it her dream fund. One day, she hoped it would be enough to open her own cafe, a cozy, inviting spot where she could serve her home-cooked meals to people in need of warmth and company. But that dream felt far away, especially on tough days like today. Lila glanced at the clock, calculating that James was likely getting ready for school at that very moment, all on his own. She sighed, a bittersweet mixture of pride and longing filling her chest. "Better days are coming," she whispered under her breath, clinging to the belief with every ounce of strength she had. Her son deserved a mother who didn't give up, and she had vowed to be that for him. The day carried on, with the usual stream of regulars and new faces. As the breakfast rush settled, Lila's co-worker Mary joined her at the counter, wiping down the surface with a practiced hand. She noticed the faraway look in Lila's eyes. "Everything all right, hun?" Mary asked, her voice soft with concern. Lila offered a small smile. "Just thinking about the future, you know?" Mary nodded knowingly, a spark of understanding in her eyes. "Got that little cafe dream of yours on the mind?" Lila's cheeks flushed slightly, but she nodded. "I've been saving for years. I know it's just a dream, but I have to believe it's possible, for James and for me." Mary's face softened, her expression one of pride. "If anyone can make that dream happen, Lila, it's you. You've got more determination than anyone I know." The encouragement settled in Lila's heart, rekindling a small but steady flame of hope. She took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of purpose wash over her. "Thank you, Mary. That means the world." Just then she noticed Ben at his table. His usual stern expression softened as he stared out the window, lost in thought. She felt an urge to check on him, sensing he might need someone to talk to today. Filling a fresh cup of coffee, she walked over to him, setting it down with a gentle smile. "Everything okay, Ben?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine care. Ben glanced up, his eyes showing a hint of vulnerability. "Just thinking about the past, I suppose. Before all this," he said, gesturing to his wheelchair. Lila nodded, her gaze soft and understanding. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but if you ever feel like sharing, I'm here." Ben was quiet for a moment before speaking softly. I used to run a business, built it from the ground up, thought I had it all, family, friends, everything. He paused, his gaze dropping to the coffee cup in his hands. Then the accident happened, and everything changed. The business, my family, it all fell apart. Lila's heart ached for him, and she reached out to place a gentle hand on his arm. I'm so sorry, Ben. That must have been incredibly hard. Ben met her eyes, a faint glimmer of gratitude in his gaze. It was, still is some days, but coming here, seeing you every morning, it helps more than you know. A lump formed in Lila's throat as she absorbed his words. She'd always tried to be kind, hoping her small gestures could make a difference, but hearing Ben's gratitude touched her deeply. She gave his arm a gentle squeeze. You're not alone, Ben. You've got friends here. You've got me. Ben's usual guarded demeanor softened further, and he gave her a nod of appreciation. Thank you, Lila. That means a lot. As Lila walked away to attend to other customers, a newfound sense of purpose filled her. In some small way, she was making a difference in Ben's life, and that reminder fueled her determination. She wasn't just working for a paycheck. She was building connections, creating a community, and bringing comfort to those who needed it most. As her shift ended and the afternoon sun began to set, Lila stepped into her car, eager to get home to James. She'd barely driven a few blocks when her car began to sputter, the engine making a troubling rattling sound. Her heart sank as she pulled over, hoping it was just a small glitch. But when she tried restarting it, the engine groaned and fell silent. Oh no, not now, Lila whispered, her heart thudding in her chest. She couldn't afford a costly repair, especially with rent coming up. After a few failed attempts to start the car again, she gave in and called for a tow truck, dreading the mechanic's diagnosis. Hours later, after sitting in the shop's waiting area anxiously tapping her foot, Lila received the estimate. Her stomach dropped as she read the number. It was more than she had saved. She took a shaky breath, knowing that even though she could try to pick up extra shifts or cut back on groceries, the cost would still be a huge setback. Her dream fund, the small stash of savings for her café, was at risk now, and she couldn't ignore the weight of that reality. That evening, as Lila sat on her worn couch, her head in her hands, the exhaustion of single motherhood, work, and financial struggles felt heavier than ever. She glanced at James's closed bedroom door, feeling a surge of determination. She couldn't let him see her worry. She'd figure something out, just as she always had. She grabbed a notepad and began scribbling down ideas. Maybe she could ask her landlord for a brief extension on rent, or find a second job for a short while. But no matter how many ideas she jotted down, the obstacles felt endless and the weight of her responsibilities pressed down on her. You'll get through this, Lila, she murmured to herself, clutching the notepad. You always do. The next day at the diner, Lila arrived with a forced smile, trying to hide her stress from her regulars and coworkers. She was doing her best to mask her worry, but Ben noticed the strain in her expression as soon as she greeted him. Everything all right, Lila? He asked, his brows furrowing as he looked at her with genuine concern. Oh, it's nothing, she said, trying to brush it off, but Ben's steady gaze made her falter. It's just car trouble. I'm not sure how I'll manage without it. Between work and getting James to school, it's going to be a challenge. Ben's expression softened, and after a moment's hesitation he asked, Would it help if I gave you a ride? I could take you home tonight, and we can figure out the rest as it comes. Relieved but hesitant, Lila smiled gratefully. Thank you, Ben. I hate to trouble you, but that would really help. Ben waved off her concern. It's no trouble at all. Besides, that's what friends are for, right? As they drove through the quiet streets that evening, Lila found herself opening up to Ben about her worries. She told him about her struggles balancing work, motherhood, and saving for her dream café. Ben listened intently, his eyes softening as he glanced at her from the driver's seat. For the first time, she saw the kind-hearted man beneath his gruff exterior, a man who understood struggle and loss, perhaps more than anyone she knew. It's not easy being a single parent, Ben said after a long pause, his voice filled with understanding. I remember the days when I was balancing work and family too. It's tough. Lila looked at him, surprised. You have children? A shadow crossed Ben's face, and he nodded slowly. I had a daughter. We lost touch after my accident. They got complicated. Her heart ached for him, realizing that he carried the weight of those painful memories each day. I'm so sorry, Ben, she said softly, her voice filled with empathy. Ben shook his head, clearing away the memories as if they were cobwebs. It's all in the past now. But tell me more about James. How old is he? As Lila talked about her son, she noticed Ben's gaze grow warmer, his questions coming from a genuine interest. For the first time, she saw a side of him that was open and caring, as if her words were a balm to his own hidden wounds. Before she knew it, they'd reached her apartment building. Thank you, Ben, Lila said, unbuckling her seatbelt and turning to him. For everything. I don't know what I would have done without your help. Ben smiled softly. Anytime, Lila. That's what friends are for. As she watched him drive away, Lila felt a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone in her struggles as she'd thought. A week later, Lila brought her son James to the diner for Bring Your Child to Work Day. She had been nervous, not knowing how her regulars would react to her energetic, curious 8-year-old, but she was eager to show him where she spent her days. Hi, Ben, Lila greeted as she walked over to his usual table, James trailing closely behind her. This is my son, James. James, say hello to Mr. Ben. James peeked out from behind her apron, his large brown eyes wide with curiosity. Hello, Mr. Ben, he said shyly, giving a small wave. To Lila's surprise, Ben's typically stern expression softened as he looked at her son. Leaning forward in his wheelchair, he offered a warm smile. Well, hello there, James. It's nice to meet you. A sense of relief flooded over Lila as she saw Ben's gentle reaction. She hadn't been sure how Ben would handle the lively energy of a child, but his smile and kind words put her at ease. Your mom tells me you're quite the artist, Ben said, his tone warm and welcoming. Do you like to draw? James nodded enthusiastically, his shyness fading as he responded. I love drawing, especially superheroes. Ben's eyes lit up, his interest piqued. Is that so? I used to collect comic books when I was your age. Who's your favorite superhero? With that question, James launched into an animated description of his latest comic book fascination, his face lighting up as he talked about his favorite characters. Lila watched in awe as Ben listened intently, asking questions, and even sharing a few of his own childhood memories. She had never seen this side of Ben, patient, gentle, and genuinely interested in what James had to say. Mom, can I show Mr. Ben my drawings? James asked excitedly, looking up at her with pleading eyes. Lila hesitated, not wanting to impose, but before she could answer, Ben spoke up. I'd love to see them, James, he said, glancing at Lila with a reassuring smile. If it's all right with your mom, of course. With a nod from Lila, James eagerly dashed off to fetch his backpack, pulling out a small sketchbook and showing Ben his collection of colorful drawings. Ben complimented each one, his gruff exterior completely gone, replaced by a genuine warmth that touched Lila's heart deeply. As they flipped through the drawings, Ben turned to Lila, his eyes glistening with a mix of admiration and sadness. He's a great kid, Lila. You should be proud. A lump formed in her throat as she saw the tenderness in Ben's expression. She nodded, too emotional to respond, grateful for the unexpected bond forming between her son and her friend. Over the following weeks, Lila noticed that Ben's visits became more frequent, and his once reserved demeanor grew warmer. She looked forward to their conversations, which had evolved from casual small talk into genuine exchanges about life, dreams, and the struggles they each faced. Lila found herself confiding in Ben, and his support felt like a lifeline during difficult times. One quiet afternoon, as she poured Ben his usual cup of black coffee, she noticed a lightness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. You seem happier, Ben, she remarked, smiling softly. It's good to see you like this. Ben looked up, surprise flickering across his face before he chuckled, almost self-consciously. Do I? He asked, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I suppose I am. I find myself looking forward to these visits more than I used to. Warmth filled Lila's heart as she realized her kindness had made a true difference in Ben's life. She'd always believed in helping people however she could, but seeing Ben's transformation firsthand made her understand the power of connection in a way she hadn't before. Well, we're always happy to have you here, Ben, she said, meaning every word. As she turned to leave, Ben spoke up. Lila, wait. She paused, looking back at him with curiosity. I wanted to thank you, he said, his voice soft but steady. Your kindness, it's made a real difference in my life. I was in a dark place for a long time, but you've given me hope again. A wave of emotion washed over Lila, and she felt tears pricking at her eyes. She blinked them back, her voice thick with gratitude as she replied, "Oh, Ben, that means more to me than you'll ever know. I'm just glad I could help, even in a small way." Ben shook his head gently as if to disagree. "It's not small, Lila. You've reminded me that there's still good in this world, that it's worth trying to connect with people again." For a moment, they shared a quiet, meaningful look, both of them recognizing the profound friendship that had blossomed between them. In helping each other, they had both found a renewed sense of purpose and connection. Over time, Lila grew even closer to Ben. Their talks became a highlight of her day, and she realized that her kindness toward him had opened up an incredible friendship. One afternoon, as she refilled his coffee cup, her thoughts wandered to her long-held dream of owning a cafe, a place where she could pour her love for people and cooking into something she and James could truly call their own. "You know, Ben," she began, a little shyly, "I've always dreamed of having my own cafe, a cozy little spot where people could feel at home." Ben's eyes lit up with interest, and he leaned forward, setting his coffee cup down. "Really? That sounds wonderful, Lila. Have you made any plans for it?" She hesitated, laughing a bit self-consciously. "Not really. It's just a dream right now. With James to look after and bills piling up, it feels so far out of reach." But Ben looked at her with a seriousness she hadn't expected. "Lila, dreams are important. They give us something to strive for, and from what I've seen, you've got the talent and the heart to make it happen." His words settled in her heart, igniting a spark she hadn't felt in a long time. "You really think so?" "I know so," Ben said firmly. "Listen, I may not be in business anymore, but I remember a thing or two. If you'd like, I could help you with the basics, business plans, budgeting, and so on." Lila's eyes widened, hope and excitement mixing in her expression. "You'd do that for me?" Ben smiled, the warmth in his gaze making him look years younger. "Of course. That's what friends are for." Over the next few weeks, Ben became Lila's mentor, guiding her through the steps to make her dream a reality. They met every chance they could, with Ben sharing his knowledge of business and planning, while Lila eagerly absorbed every detail. Each lesson made her dream feel a little more real, and her excitement grew with each new skill she learned. "You know, Lila," Ben said one afternoon after she'd shown him her draft of a business plan, "you've got something special. Your cooking is fantastic, sure, but it's more than that. You make people feel like they belong, like they're part of something." Lila felt tears prick at her eyes, deeply moved by his words. "Thank you, Ben. I never thought I'd have a chance to make this dream real, but with your help, it's starting to feel possible." Ben reached out, giving her hand a gentle pat. "It is possible, Lila. You've got the skill and the determination. Don't give up on your dream. I believe in you." Each night after putting James to bed, Lila would sit at her small kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks and printouts, going over everything Ben had taught her. She devoured articles on small business loans, health regulations, and menu planning, even though the sheer amount of information was often overwhelming. Whenever doubt crept in, she would think of Ben's words. "You've got the skill and the determination." Those words became her mantra, reminding her of her purpose and pushing her forward, no matter how daunting the path seemed. One evening, after hours of reading, Lila pulled out a fresh notebook and began sketching her vision for the cafe. She imagined cozy, mismatched chairs, walls lined with local artwork, and a menu featuring her signature pies and hearty meals that would make people feel like they were at home. The numbers, however, were daunting. Startup costs, rent, and equipment. She paused, the pen hovering above the page, but then Ben's encouragement echoed in her mind, and she pushed forward, determined to make it work. The next day, Lila couldn't wait to share her progress with Ben. When he rolled into the diner for his usual coffee, she greeted him with a bright, excited smile. "Ben, you won't believe what I've been working on." "Oh?" he asked, his curiosity piqued as she poured his coffee with a steady hand, despite her excitement. "Tell me all about it." As Lila shared her ideas, from the cafe's layout to menu items, Ben listened intently, nodding with pride. His quiet support made her dream feel more tangible than ever. She knew she couldn't have come this far without his encouragement and guidance. "You know, Ben," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "I couldn't have done this without you. Your belief in me, it means everything." Ben reached out and gently patted her hand. "Lila, you've always had it in you. I'm just glad I could help you see it." At that moment, Lila realized that this dream wasn't just about opening a business. It was about creating a place of warmth and community, just like Ben had said. With his support, she felt more ready than ever to bring her vision to life and, one day, make him proud. A few weeks later, Lila found herself sitting across from Ben at the diner, their heads bent over a notebook filled with scribbles and ideas for her future cafe. As they brainstormed, Ben leaned forward with an excited glint in his eyes. "What about calling it Lila's Sunshine Cafe?" he suggested, a gentle smile forming on his face. Lila's heart swelled at the name. It captured exactly what she wanted, a place that radiated warmth where people could feel a sense of belonging. She jotted it down, a satisfied grin spreading across her face. "It's perfect, Ben. It's exactly what I want this cafe to be." Together they discussed the menu and interior design, dreaming up ideas that felt both cozy and inviting. Lila described her grandmother's famous peach cobbler recipe, and Ben's eyes lit up. "That sounds like a must-have for the menu," he said with enthusiasm. "You know, I'd be the first in line for that." Lila laughed, adding it to her growing list of menu ideas. Ben's business advice was invaluable, but even more so was his support and genuine interest in every detail of her plan. Each idea they shared made the dream feel more possible, more like something she could bring to life. "What if we had a little reading nook?" Ben proposed, his tone thoughtful. "A few armchairs, some bookshelves, a place for people to relax." Lila's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. "I love it, Ben. That would make it feel even more like a home away from home." As they planned, Lila realized how special this cafe was becoming to both of them. It was no longer just a dream of hers, it was a shared vision, something they were building together. She felt deeply grateful for Ben's friendship, knowing that his guidance and faith in her had helped transform her dream into something real. With Ben's encouragement, Lila began tackling the practical aspects of starting her business. One bright afternoon, she sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by papers, and picked up her phone to call the Small Business Bureau. "Hello, I'm calling to ask about the process of obtaining a business license," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. As she listened, she took notes furiously, grateful for the preparation Ben had given her. When she hung up, a sense of pride filled her. She was taking real steps, not just dreaming but making things happen. The next day, during her break at the diner, Lila met Ben with an excited gleam in her eye. "Ben, I did it. I called about the business license, just like you suggested." Ben's face lit up with pride. "That's fantastic, Lila. I knew you could do it. So, what's next?" She pulled out her notebook, flipping to a page filled with to-do items. "I think I need to start looking for a location," she replied, a hint of nervous excitement in her voice. Ben nodded approvingly. "That's a great next step. Just remember to consider foot traffic and parking when you're looking at places." Their conversation felt charged with a new energy. Each suggestion Ben offered made the cafe feel more attainable, as if they were both walking this path side by side. Lila felt a surge of gratitude as she looked at him, realizing just how deeply he believed in her. "Ben," she said, her voice softening with emotion, "your support, I couldn't do this without you. It means the world to me." Ben's expression softened, and he reached out to squeeze her hand. "Lila, seeing you work toward your dream, it's inspiring. You've given me something to look forward to, too." At that moment, Lila understood that this journey was about so much more than just opening a cafe. It was about friendship, resilience, and the belief they had in each other. Ben had helped her grow her dream from an idea into a reality, and she felt ready to continue forward, whatever challenges might come. A few months into her journey of preparing to open her cafe, Lila was going through her mail one evening when a letter caught her eye. She opened it curiously, only to feel her heart stop as she read the first few lines. It was from a small business grant program she had applied to months ago, one she'd almost forgotten about in the whirlwind of daily life. "You've been selected," she whispered, reading the words again to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Tears welled up as she realized what this meant. This grant was her ticket to make Lila's Sunshine Café a reality. Her hands shook as she folded the letter, a smile spreading across her face. She couldn't wait to tell Ben, who had encouraged her every step of the way. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. The next morning, as if on cue, Ben wheeled into the diner right as Lila was pouring coffee. She could hardly contain her excitement as she hurried over to greet him, clutching the letter tightly. "Ben, you won't believe what just happened," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. Ben looked up, curiosity and pride mingling in his expression. "What is it, Lila? You look like you're about to burst." With a grin, Lila held up the letter. "Remember that small business grant I applied for ages ago? The one I thought was a long shot? Well, I got it. They chose me." Ben's face lit up with genuine happiness as he reached out, gently squeezing her hand. "Lila, that's incredible news. You deserve this so much." Her heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ben. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for your support. I couldn't have done this without you." Ben shook his head, a warm smile crossing his face. "No, Lila, you did this. I may have helped along the way, but this is your dream, your hard work." The rest of the day felt like a whirlwind of congratulations from her coworkers and regular customers. Each word of encouragement reminded her of how far she had come and how much this little cafe meant to the community that had supported her. She was no longer just a waitress with a dream. She was on the cusp of becoming the owner of Lila's Sunshine Café. In the weeks that followed, Lila worked tirelessly to turn her dream into reality. She scoured the town for locations and eventually found a cozy, vacant building not far from the diner. It was small but had the charm she wanted, a big front window for natural light, warm wood floors, and enough space for tables, a reading nook, and a counter where she could serve her famous pies. Excited, she took Ben to see the space, and they spent hours envisioning every detail. Ben's business advice was invaluable, but more than that, his belief in her made every challenge feel conquerable. "What about a pay-it-forward wall?" Ben suggested one day as they discussed ideas to build a community vibe. Customers could buy an extra coffee or meal for someone in need, and they could leave a note on the wall. Lila's eyes sparkled at the idea. "That's perfect, Ben. I want this place to be welcoming for everyone, no matter their situation. Just like how you and the others made me feel welcome when I first came to town." They spent hours mapping out the cafe, sketching ideas, and planning for every possible scenario. Ben's ideas and enthusiasm filled her with renewed purpose. They weren't just opening a cafe, they were creating a haven for the community. With Ben's guidance, Lila soon found herself diving into the more complex tasks of setting up a small business. She spent evenings researching equipment and suppliers, reading up on zoning laws, and meeting with contractors. Each task felt daunting, but with Ben's steady encouragement, she pushed through, determined to bring their shared vision to life. Then, one day, after a long evening of planning, Ben suggested a name for the cafe's reading nook. "How about Ben's Corner?" he said, a soft smile touching his face. "Not that I want my name on the wall, but it might give people a sense of connection, a little nod to all the people who have helped you along the way." Lila felt a lump in her throat as she considered the suggestion. The reading nook was already her favorite part of the cafe plan, but naming it after Ben made it even more meaningful. "Ben's Corner? I love it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It'll be a reminder of everything you've done to help me make this dream real." As they finished up that night, Lila looked around the empty space that would soon become her cafe. She felt the weight of her journey, every struggle, every moment of doubt, and a deep gratitude for the support that had carried her this far. "I'm proud of you, Lila," Ben said as he looked around the cafe. "What you're building here, it's something special." Lila smiled, her heart brimming with warmth. "Thank you, Ben. I wouldn't have made it here without you. This cafe is as much yours as it is mine." They shared a look of mutual respect and friendship, both aware that their connection had changed them in ways they hadn't expected. Lila's Sunshine Café was becoming more than just a business. It was a symbol of friendship, perseverance, and the power of dreams shared. The day had finally arrived. Lila's Sunshine Café was ready to open its doors. As the early morning sun cast a warm glow over the cafe's freshly painted sign, Lila took a deep breath, standing proudly outside. She could hardly believe this moment had come. Her dream, once a distant hope, was now real, tangible. She could feel the excitement buzzing in the air as she unlocked the doors, welcoming her first customers with a beaming smile. "Welcome to Lila's Sunshine Café." She greeted everyone warmly, her heart racing with joy and pride. Friends, neighbors, and regulars from the diner poured in, eager to show their support. The cafe filled quickly, the lively chatter mixing with the clinking of cups and the aroma of freshly baked pastries. Lila moved about, serving steaming mugs of coffee and plates of her signature pies, every movement filled with purpose and gratitude. She was living her dream, and it was better than she had ever imagined. Across the room, her son James beamed with pride, telling anyone who would listen, "That's my mom. She owns this place." The sight of her son's happiness was enough to bring tears to her eyes. This cafe wasn't just for her. It was for James too, a testament to the hard work and resilience they'd both endured. She felt a surge of gratitude for everyone who had believed in her, especially Ben, whose friendship had been her guiding light through every step of the journey. As the morning unfolded, Lila kept glancing at the door, hoping to see a familiar face. Just when she thought he might not make it, Ben rolled in, looking pale but determined. Her heart swelled with emotion as she rushed over to greet him, carefully navigating through the tables to avoid spilling any coffee. "Ben, you made it!" she exclaimed, bending down to give him a gentle hug. Ben's eyes sparkled as he looked around, taking in the bustling cafe. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world, Lila," he said softly, pride filling his voice. "Look at what you've accomplished." With Ben settled at a cozy spot by the window, Lila brought him a slice of freshly baked apple pie and a steaming cup of coffee, just the way he liked it. Black, no sugar. She felt a deep sense of joy as she watched him savor each bite, knowing that his support had been instrumental in making this cafe a reality. As she continued serving customers, Lila's gaze would occasionally drift back to Ben, who sat observing the bustling cafe with quiet pride. She could feel his silent encouragement from across the room, and it steadied her, grounding her in the moment. She was living the dream they had built together, and having Ben there to see it was the most meaningful part of her day. The grand opening was an overwhelming success. By midday, Lila's Sunshine Café was packed with well-wishers, new friends, and familiar faces from around town. Each customer brought stories, laughter, and warmth into the cafe, transforming it from a simple business into a true community hub. Lila had envisioned a place of belonging, and seeing that vision come to life made every hardship worthwhile. When the rush finally subsided, Lila took a moment to look around. Her heart swelled as she watched friends catching up, families laughing together, and even a few teenagers studying in the reading nook she and Ben had affectionately named Ben's Corner. This wasn't just a cafe. It was a space for people to connect, to feel seen and valued. As the cafe settled into a calm hum, Lila joined Ben at his table, a tired but happy smile on her face. "You've created something amazing here, Lila," Ben said, his voice full of admiration. "This place, it's more than just a cafe. It's a gift to the whole community." Lila's heart warmed at his words. "Thank you, Ben. I couldn't have done it without you. I hope you know that." They sat together in comfortable silence, both reflecting on the incredible journey that had led them here. For Lila, this cafe was the fulfillment of her deepest dream, but it was also a tribute to the friendship and kindness that had brought her so far. She had started this journey with a vision, but Ben had given her the courage to make it real. Over the following weeks, Lila's Sunshine Café quickly became a beloved spot in town. Every morning, Lila opened the doors with a sense of joy and pride she had never known. She greeted each customer by name, remembering their orders and making everyone feel like family. The warmth and care she put into every interaction became the heart of the cafe, and her genuine kindness left a lasting impression on everyone who walked through the door. Ben continued to visit most mornings, taking his usual seat by the window and watching Lila work her magic. He'd smile proudly as she moved about, bringing life to the cafe they'd dreamed up together. When things slowed down, Lila would join him, and they'd talk about everything from the day's operations to new ideas for the cafe. Ben's advice remained invaluable, but more than that, his presence was a reminder of the strength that had carried her here. "You're doing wonderfully, Lila," he'd say often, his voice full of warmth. "This place is everything you dreamed of, and more." Lila would blush, but deep down, she knew he was right. The cafe had grown beyond just her dream. It had become a beacon of connection, kindness, and hope for everyone in town. And knowing Ben was proud of her made the journey even more meaningful. Every now and then, as she bustled around, her gaze would land on Ben's corner, and she'd smile to herself, grateful for the friendship that had given her the courage to reach for her dream. As weeks passed, Lila's cafe blossomed, not only as a place for great coffee and homemade pies, but as a community hub where people found comfort, friendship, and hope. One day, Lila noticed a group of local teenagers huddled in Ben's corner, books and notebooks scattered across the table. They laughed as they sipped hot chocolates, occasionally pausing to study. A new idea began to take shape in Lila's mind. She wanted to create opportunities for young people in her town, to give them the same sense of belonging and purpose that Lila's Sunshine Cafe had given her. The very next day, she put up a help wanted sign in the cafe window, hoping to bring in some eager young faces. Within a week, Lila had interviewed several applicants and hired 3 bright-eyed teenagers, Emily, Miguel, and Zoe. They were nervous at first, but she took her role as their mentor seriously. Each day, she taught them something new, from brewing the perfect cup of coffee to managing inventory. But beyond the tasks, Lila emphasized the spirit of the cafe. "Remember," she would say, smiling gently, "every customer who walks in deserves a warm welcome. Make them feel like they're at home." The teenagers soaked up her words, working diligently and finding their footing in the cafe. Emily quickly became a whiz at latte art, her hands creating little hearts and flowers in the foam that delighted customers. Miguel excelled at customer service, his friendly smile winning over even the toughest patrons. And Zoe showed a natural knack for baking. Her chocolate chip cookies became so popular that Lila added them to the permanent menu under the name Zoe's Famous Cookies. One afternoon, as Lila and Ben shared a coffee break, he remarked on the vibrant energy the young employees brought to the cafe. "You're doing more than just serving coffee, Lila," he said warmly. "You're shaping these kids' futures." Lila's eyes misted with pride. "I want this place to be more than a job for them. I want it to be a stepping stone, something that helps them believe in their own dreams." Ben nodded, his eyes reflecting the pride he felt for her. Lila's Sunshine Cafe had become more than a business. It was a place of growth, mentorship, and opportunity. Parents in the community often stopped by to thank Lila, grateful for the life skills and experience she was passing on to their children. Lila made sure to celebrate her young employees' achievements, no matter how big or small. When Emily got accepted to college, Lila threw a surprise party at the cafe. When Miguel's grades improved, she gave him a bonus as encouragement. And when Zoe's cookies became the top-selling treat, Lila proudly displayed a hand-lettered sign proclaiming, "Home of Zoe's Famous Cookies." Each day, as Lila watched these young people grow, she felt her heart swell with pride. Her cafe wasn't just a place for coffee and food, it was becoming a place where dreams took root. But as the cafe flourished, Lila noticed that Ben's health was beginning to decline. His visits became less frequent, and when he did make it to the cafe, he seemed more tired than usual. Her heart ached as she watched her dear friends struggle, knowing he had always been her rock, her guiding light in this journey. Without hesitation, Lila rearranged her schedule to allow time to visit Ben at home each day. She brought him fresh meals from the cafe, stayed to chat, and kept him updated on the goings-on at Lila's Sunshine Cafe. Their bond grew deeper, and the visits became precious moments of comfort and connection for both of them. "You don't have to do this, Lila," Ben said one afternoon, his voice weak but filled with gratitude. "I don't want to burden you." Lila smiled, taking his hand in hers. "You've done so much for me, Ben. Let me be here for you now." Their quiet talks became a source of strength for Lila. She looked forward to sharing stories about the cafe, about the customers, and the young employees she was mentoring. Ben would listen intently, his face lighting up as she described each success, every small victory that reminded her of how far they'd come together. One evening, as Lila fluffed Ben's pillows, he looked up at her with a familiar spark in his eyes. "You know, Lila, I've been thinking," he began, his voice soft but determined. She sat down beside him, sensing he had something important to share. "What's on your mind, Ben?" Ben's gaze held hers, his eyes bright with pride. "The cafe, you, everything we've built together, it's more than I ever imagined. You've created something truly special, and I couldn't be prouder." Lila felt tears sting her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We did this together, Ben. None of it would have happened without you." He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he grasped hers. "You've done more than make a dream come true, Lila. You've built a place of warmth, hope, and belonging. That's a legacy worth leaving behind." At that moment, Lila felt the weight of Ben's words, understanding just how much her cafe meant to him. He had been her friend, her mentor. And now, in this quiet exchange, she saw that his impact on her life and on the cafe was as enduring as the kindness he had taught her to share. Late one afternoon, as Lila was tidying up the cafe, she received a call that made her heart stop. It was from the hospital. Ben had been admitted. She rushed there, her mind racing with worry and memories of their journey together, each moment a testament to his unwavering support and friendship. When she entered his hospital room, she found Ben lying on the bed, his face pale but his eyes clear and bright. He looked at her, his expression softening into a smile as she approached, clutching a small bouquet of daisies, hoping they might brighten his day. "Lila," he whispered, his voice raspy yet warm. "You didn't have to come." Lila placed the flowers on his bedside table and pulled up a chair. "Of course I came, Ben. You're my friend. I couldn't stay away," she said, taking his hand gently. Ben's eyes filled with tears as he looked at her. "You know," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "after my accident, I thought I'd lost everything. I pushed everyone away, convinced no one would ever care. But you never gave up on me." A lump formed in Lila's throat as she listened, and she felt tears welling up in her own eyes. "You've been such a friend to me, Ben," she whispered. "You've helped me believe in myself, in my dreams. I wouldn't be here without you." Ben smiled weakly, his hand tightening around hers. "Watching you bring that cafe to life, Lila, it brought me so much joy. You've given me hope again, a reason to believe that life still holds meaning, even after everything." They sat together in silence, the weight of their shared journey filling the room. Lila felt a deep sadness settle within her, knowing that Ben's time was drawing near. But she also felt immense gratitude for the friendship that had transformed both their lives. In the days that followed, Lila was by Ben's side as much as she could be, providing comfort and support as he had done for her. When the time came, friends and neighbors gathered around him, their faces etched with love and sorrow. They held his hand, whispered words of comfort, and shared memories of the man who had touched so many lives through his kindness and generosity. As Ben's breathing grew shallow, Lila leaned close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's okay, Ben," she murmured softly. "We're all here. You can rest now." With a final, gentle squeeze of her hand, Ben took his last breath. The room fell silent, as everyone absorbed the loss of a friend, a mentor, a man whose quiet strength had built a legacy of kindness. Lila's shoulders shook with silent sobs, feeling the profound loss of the friend who had become like family. Through her grief, she felt the presence of her community around her, friends, neighbors, and even her son James, who held her hand tightly. This was the very community Ben had helped her build, the people who would carry forward his memory. In the weeks that followed, Lila dedicated a small corner of her cafe to Ben, filling the space with photos that captured the many facets of his life. There were snapshots of him at the diner, sitting beside her and James, and even a few faded photos from his days as a successful businessman. Each picture told a piece of Ben's story, a life that had touched countless others. One day, as she stood before the memorial, Lila placed a framed photo of Ben at the cafe's grand opening, his eyes alight with pride and joy. She gently touched the photo, her heart swelling with gratitude and sadness. "Oh, Ben," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I hope you can see this. I hope you know how much you meant to all of us." As she stood there, lost in memories, her old coworker Mary approached, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's beautiful, Lila," Mary said softly. "Ben would have loved this." Unable to speak, Lila nodded, her eyes misting with tears. She looked around the cafe, taking in the faces of community members who had gathered to honor Ben's memory. Some left flowers, others small mementos, each gesture a reminder of the countless lives he had touched. Her son James joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Mom, this is amazing. Uncle Ben would be so proud." The word uncle brought a bittersweet smile to her face, reminding her of how deeply Ben had become a part of their family. Through the laughter, the stories, and the shared memories, she felt the strength of their connection, a bond that would remain long after his passing. As the day wore on, more people came to pay their respects. They shared stories, laughed at fond memories, and comforted one another, honoring the legacy Ben had left behind. Standing in her cafe, surrounded by friends and family, Lila felt a profound sense of gratitude. Though Ben was gone, his spirit lived on in every corner of Lila's Sunshine Cafe, in every smile, every shared moment, every act of kindness. Months after Ben's passing, Lila's Sunshine Cafe continued to thrive, each day carrying forward the spirit of kindness that Ben had inspired. The cafe had grown beyond just a place to eat. It had become a sanctuary, a place where the community could come together to laugh, share, and find comfort. Lila took special care to maintain Ben's corner, filling the reading nook with books donated by customers and adding new flowers weekly, a small tribute to her friend who had always believed in her. Often, she'd see customers pause at the memorial wall, reading Ben's story and leaving their own reflections or messages of gratitude. One chilly morning, Lila was behind the counter serving a group of regulars when she saw a young man standing in front of Ben's memorial. He looked about James's age, maybe a little older, and held a small bouquet of wildflowers. After a moment, he set them down carefully beside Ben's photo and whispered something too quiet for anyone to hear. Curious, Lila approached him as he turned to leave. "Hi there," she said gently. "Did you know Ben?" The young man looked at her, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't, not really. My mom told me about him, about how he helped build this place and how much he meant to people here. She said he was the kind of person who made you want to be better." Lila's heart warmed at the young man's words. Ben's legacy was reaching people he'd never even met. "He really was that kind of person," Lila replied softly. "And this cafe, it's here because of his kindness and support." The young man nodded, looking around the cafe with appreciation. "It's a beautiful place," he said. "My mom used to come here with him sometimes, and she always told me how special it was to him." They shared a smile before he left, and Lila watched as he walked out into the morning light. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that Ben's influence continued to shape the lives of everyone who came through her doors. In the weeks that followed, Lila started a new initiative inspired by Ben's memory. She put up a Pay It Forward board near the register, where customers could purchase an extra coffee or meal for someone in need. Small slips of paper with a coffee on the house or a slice of pie, courtesy of a friend, quickly filled the board, each one a simple but powerful act of kindness. The board became a focal point in the cafe, a visible reminder of the generosity and compassion Ben had shown. Customers often shared stories of how a free meal or coffee had brightened their day when they needed it most, and Lila could feel Ben's presence in every kind gesture that passed through her cafe. One afternoon, a local teacher approached Lila, her eyes warm with gratitude. "My students and I would love to partner with the cafe," she said. "Maybe we could bring some of the high school students here for work experience, or even help with the Pay It Forward board. They could learn about business, but also about community." The idea filled Lila with excitement. She had seen the impact the cafe had on the younger employees she'd hired, and was thrilled at the thought of expanding Ben's legacy to a new generation. She could imagine the pride Ben would feel if he could see how his belief in her was shaping lives across the community. "I'd love that," Lila replied with a bright smile. This place has always been about more than just coffee. It's about people, about caring for each other. Months turned into seasons, and Lila's Sunshine Café became a beloved fixture in the small town. Each day, Lila opened the doors with a deep sense of pride, greeting every customer as if they were family. Her warmth and sincerity turned regulars into friends, and newcomers felt like they belonged from the moment they stepped inside. On quiet afternoons, she'd sit with her son James and tell him stories about Ben, the man who had been more than a friend, who had seen potential in her and believed in her dream when she struggled to believe in it herself. She shared Ben's wisdom, his resilience, and his kindness, hoping that James would carry those lessons with him. "Mom, do you think I could run a cafe one day too?" James asked one day, his eyes bright with curiosity. Lila's heart swelled as she looked at her son, seeing a glimmer of Ben's spirit in him. "Of course you can, sweetheart. You can do anything you set your mind to, and if you ever need a little help, remember that you'll always have people who believe in you, just like Uncle Ben believed in me." James smiled, nodding as he looked around the bustling cafe, a place that held his mother's dream and his own hopes for the future. Years later, as Lila stood behind the counter on a busy afternoon, she took a moment to look around the cafe. It was filled with life, teenagers laughing, elderly friends catching up, and parents reading stories to their children in Ben's corner. Each face, each moment of connection was a part of the legacy Ben had helped build. She glanced at the memorial wall where Ben's photo still hung, his eyes twinkling with pride. Lila felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey they had shared, a journey that had transformed her life and brought her a family she never expected. "We did it, Ben," she whispered softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Look at what we created together." At that moment, Lila knew that her dream had grown into something far greater than she had imagined. Lila's Sunshine Café was not just a business. It was a testament to the power of kindness, friendship, and unwavering belief in the dreams that can change Lila. Friendship, kindness, and the power of support. Through the journey of Lila and Ben, we learn that sometimes all someone needs to make their dreams come true is one person who believes in them. Ben's unwavering support and encouragement transformed Lila's life, helping her build something beautiful for her family and her community. The lesson here is that each of us has the power to make a difference, whether through a kind word, a supportive hand, or a simple gesture of encouragement. Lila's Sunshine Café became more than just a coffee shop. It became a symbol of community built on love and gratitude. This story reminds us that when you help others, you can create something meaningful that endures beyond all expectations. If you enjoyed this story, press 1 in the comments. If you loved it, press 2. And don't hesitate to share your own stories with us. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspirational stories. Let us know what you think about this story in the comments below. Thank you for being part of Lila and Ben's heartwarming journey. Remember to keep spreading kindness and believing in the power of dreams.